Josh Berry is expected to drive for Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024, and Legacy Motor Club will switch manufacturers from Chevy to Toyota heading into 2024. What's going, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start talking about Bommarito. As it was announced this morning, the Bommarito will sponsor Ben Rhodes for multiple races in 2023, starting this weekend at Kansas Speedway. Bommarito has sponsored ThorSport, I believe, in the past, so glad to see they're coming back to sponsor ThorSport Racing. They've also sponsored Jordan Anderson Racing's organization in the past, and glad to see that a company from the St. Louis area is going to be sponsoring ThorSport this year. Congratulations to them on getting that opportunity. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Hailie Deegan, as she also has a new sponsor for this weekend, and it's going to be Dibble Dough. Dibble Dough, I'm not sure if they're a new company sport or not, so if they are a new company, really glad to see that they're joining the sport. I'm glad to see Hailie Deegan has a new sponsor for this weekend because she's had quite a few different sponsors so far in 2023. It's not just one company sponsor her like Monster. She's had multiple different companies sponsor. Hopefully with that new sponsorship, she can have a good run this weekend at Kansas Speedway. This is a good track for her. She historically are really good there, and hopefully she can have a good run in that truck this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about all the throwbacks that have been revealed recently. So in the last day or two, there have been a lot of throwbacks that have been revealed. The first throwback we're looking at is Ross Chastain's throwback to Dale Jarrett's 1999 scheme. This scheme looks absolutely incredible, one of my favorite ones I have seen so far. And one cool thing I love about it is the fact that UPS is back in the sport for the first time since 2014. This scheme looks incredible. I think Trackhouse always does a great job with their paint schemes. This one's no exception. They did an amazing job on this paint scheme. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeffrey Earnhardt's Dale Earnhardt throwback to his 1997 Wheaties car that he's going to run at Darlington. This looks really good, very similar, not 100% perfect. I wish Wheaties was sponsoring them, but still really good to see that Jeffrey Earnhardt's doing a throwback to his grandfather, quintessentially. The next paint scheme you're taking a look at is Eric Almirola's throwback to Dale Jr.'s 2001 All-Star Game throwback. This looks absolutely amazing, and this is for me my favorite throwback so far. I love the color scheme of it. It looks incredible. I love the red. I love the white. It looks amazing, and it looks fantastic in my opinion. The next throwback we're looking at is Ryan Blaney's throwback to Dave Blaney, of course, who is the father of Ryan Blaney. I'll be honest, it's probably my least favorite throwback that's been revealed so far this year. It's a good throwback for sure, but honestly, it's not perfect. The color scheme isn't 100% great, but nonetheless, it's good to see that he's doing a throwback to his dad. The next throwback we're looking at is Brett Moffitt's throwback to Tim Richmond's 1986 to 1987 scheme. I think AM Racing did a really good job on this one. It's not 100% perfect, but I think did a really good job on this paint scheme. I'm definitely looking forward to see it on the racetrack during Throwback Weekend. And a final throwback we are looking at is Justin Allgaier's 70-year throwback to Brandt. I think Justin Allgaier has done quite a few throwbacks to Brandt in the past. Of course, this is his 70-year anniversary, and he's been part of the Brandt side of things for about 15 years now. So it's really good to see that Justin Allgaier is once again going to be working with them. Really excited that he's got a throwback with them this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Martin Truex Jr. and Brad Keselowski. As yesterday, we had multiple drivers that got announced at the top 75 greatest drivers list, and both of the drivers I just mentioned, that being Martin Truex Jr. and Brad Keselowski, have been added to the list. I think both are absolutely well-deserving of being in the top 75 greatest drivers list. Brad Keselowski, also, obviously the 2012 NASCAR Cup Series champion, 2010 NASCAR Xfinity Series champion, won 34, 35 NASCAR Cup Series races, and has won every major race you can win: the Southern 500, the Brickyard 400, and the Coke 600. The only thing he needs to really do to complete his career is win the Daytona 500, which he has come pretty close to doing that in the past. Both of them also deserve it. And you go back to Martin Truex Jr., Cup Series champion, just won the most recent race at Dover, and has accomplished a lot in this sport as well, including winning the Southern 500 and the Coke 600 in the same season. I think both absolutely have earned the right to get into the top 75 greatest, and congratulations to both of them on making it into the top 75 list. I expected it, but nonetheless, congratulations to both of them on making it into the list. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. Now, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, of course, this weekend is the Miami Grand Prix for Formula One, which, of course, is in the United States. And both of them were at Charlotte Motor Speedway partnering up with RFK, and they both ended up driving the next-gen car. Also, you had a swap where Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher, I believe, ended up driving a Ford GT at Charlotte. This is a really, really cool collab to see. Both drivers currently drive for Alpine in Formula 1 right now, and both have struggled in Formula 1 so far in the 2023 season. But I love them getting out of their comfort zone, and I love the fact they're coming over and testing out NASCAR Cup Series cars. I think it's just really cool to see. It would have been really, really cool to see Brad Keselowski get in a Formula 1 car, do like a driver swap very similar to what Tony Stewart and Lewis Hamilton did back in 2011. I think that would have been really, really cool. But nonetheless, exciting to see they got Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly working. I think a lot of it has to do with their partnership with Castrol. I believe Alpine is sponsored by Castrol, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's a huge reason why this ended up happening. And nonetheless, this is really, really awesome to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Baku TV ratings for this past weekend. So Adam Stern always puts out TV ratings pretty much every single race, and according to him, ESPN got a 0.53 rating and 958,000 viewers. That is up from a 0.48 rating and 832,000 viewers. However, one thing that needs to be noted is this race last year was in June compared to this year, which the race was in late April. I think it is really good to see, though, that nonetheless the ratings are up, especially since this race, I believe it's 6 in the morning here in Central Standard Time. It was an early morning race, so to have almost 1 million people watching on an early Sunday morning is really, really great to see. I have a lot of fans who are from the West Coast in Formula 1, so it's good to see a lot of people tuning in to Formula 1. I think this is an absolute dub, a great move, and great to see that Formula 1 continues to grow in the United States, and glad to see that nearly 1 million people watched the Baku race. It was not a very exciting race, though, so a lot of people didn't really tune into a great race, but it's really good nonetheless for Formula 1 to see that the ratings are up. Really exciting stuff, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about the Barber TV ratings. As according to Adam Stern, NBC got a 0.8757 rating and 930,000 viewers for Sunday's NTT IndyCar Series race at Barber. That is roughly unchanged from a 0.59 rating and 920,000 viewers in 2022. So it's basically a little bit of a downtick from 2022, but a little bit up in viewerships, but down in the rating a little bit. So not much really going on there, which isn't a positive, but isn't a negative for IndyCar. Obviously, I thought the ratings would be up a little more, considering I thought this weekend's race at Barber was absolutely excellent and was really, really good this weekend. I wish the ratings were up a little bit more on that front. But I think IndyCar just needs to do a little bit more job with their social media presence. I really thought the 100 Days Indy might help IndyCar a little bit, but those ratings have just not been really good so far. I think they've only got like 100,000 viewers on average. We don't know what the key demographic is, because the key demographic is really the most important thing when it comes to this kind of stuff. So really good to see ratings are not down. Disappointed they're not up, but nonetheless, that is a TV ratings from Barber. Wish they were up, but it is what it is. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ross Chastain. As it was announced yesterday morning that Ross Chastain will drive for DGM Racing for 2 races in 2023 in the number 91 car, driving at Sonoma and the Indianapolis Road Course with Skip Barber Racing School sponsorship. Now, Ross Chastain has driven for DGM Racing quite a bit in the past. I think he drove for them once so far in the 2023 season, I think back at Auto Club, if I'm not mistaken, and now he's going to have an opportunity to drive for them once again. Especially with how good DGM Racing has been on the road courses, I would not be surprised if Ross Chastain is a contender for the win. We go back to Dakota last year where he drove for them in the Xfinity Series and was up front in a lot of that event. They put a lot of effort into their road course program, and they always do a really, really good job. But you also got a great driver like Ross Chastain, who, yes, who's kind of been in the controversy, but he always drives really, really good and does a good job when he's in Xfinity. So I expect Chastain to be a contender at both those races, and I think he's going to have a really good shot to potentially get a victory with DGM Racing. Yes, they're not the fastest team in the world, but I think that he's going to have a really strong run with DGM Racing in both of those races when he gets behind the wheel of that car. I think he's going to be a big contender in those races. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about the Dover TV ratings from this past weekend. So the Dover TV ratings have come out, and honestly, they actually are pretty positive. So according to Adam Stern and Austin Kanensky, FS1 got a 0.63 rating and 1.027 million viewers. for Monday's rescheduled NASCAR race at Dover. That is up from last year's race, which had 944,000 views, in 2019, where that one only has 798,000 views. That is actually really, really good, considering this race was, like I said, delayed to Monday. This is actually a really, really good rating for a race that was delayed on Monday. Yes, you want to see those ratings a little bit higher, but honestly, this is a huge positive for the sport. And if I'm not mistaken, this is now the third straight race in a row that's actually an uptick in the ratings, which is really, really great to see, because at the beginning of the year, we were seeing huge downticks in TV ratings. But now we're starting to see a more positive direction with the TV ratings, and especially with the contract negotiations when it comes to the TV contracts, you want to see those ratings overall end up going up in a positive light, and you don't want to see them going down. I think the chase light effect is definitely a real thing. I think a lot of people are tuning in. NASCAR does need to work on promoting their other drivers, but I am very happy to see for this time around the TV ratings are up for Dover. I think this is a huge and a massive positive thing for the sport. And I'm really happy to see, nonetheless, that the ratings are up from this weekend in Dover. Hopefully, the upcoming race at Kansas, which weather could be a big factor for this weekend as well. Kansas, we're not entirely sure yet, but we'll have to wait and see in regards to that. But nonetheless, a huge win for the sport to see ratings up once again. And I hope that this can help with the TV contract negotiations. We're getting close to finding out what those TV partners are going to be. We know that Fox and NBC are likely going to be the lead TV partners on that front. Nonetheless, so the TV ratings have come out, and they actually are pretty positive. So good to see ratings up from this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. As Kyle Busch looks like might have another new sponsor for later this year, and it is Thornton's. Now, Thornton's has sponsored in NASCAR in the past. They sponsored Ty Dillon, I believe, in one or two races last year in 2022, where they sponsored him at Pocono and also sponsored him at Daytona in August as well. But this is really, really big for Kyle Busch if he truly does have a new sponsor. It looks like he does. Kyle Busch has had multiple companies that have been with the Rich Schultz Racing brand in the past, that being Cheddar's, that being Alsco, that being other companies like Lenovo that sponsored him this past weekend at Dover, among other companies that have sponsored him in the past, well, including 3Chai. But also, he's brought in new sponsors over this year. He's had Netspend sponsor him. Mark III Benefits has basically sponsored him this year. And you've also had other companies come into play now, like Thornton's, which is a pretty big company, which is a big partner of the Winston brand. I think this is absolutely a big dub for Kyle. And it just shows that Kyle Busch is definitely someone that was not struggling to find sponsorship. We obviously know the story. We know that Joe Gibbs was trying to offer Kyle Busch a ton of money. Kyle Busch kind of didn't want to basically pay for that much. But I think it's really good nonetheless to see that Kyle Busch continues to pick up new brands and new partnerships and new sponsors to work with him going forward. I think this is a pretty big win for Kyle Busch if this truly is one, which I think it is. So great to see Kyle Busch has a potential new sponsor, and I'm really happy to see that that is the sponsor he's going to have. I think it's a good-looking car. It looks absolutely awesome, looks incredible, and I'm definitely looking forward to see whatever race they run. I would assume it's going to be run at Pocono or Daytona, but I'm not entirely sure yet. But nonetheless, another sponsor for Kyle Busch. Really awesome and really good stuff overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As yesterday, Kyle Larson was spotted in Indiana, around the Indianapolis area, and he was getting his seat fitted for the 2024 Indianapolis 500. Kyle Larson obviously is going to be driving for Aaron McLaren SP in next year's 2024 Indianapolis 500. One thing I noticed, though, in the background is there's actually a watermelon in the background, which I think is really, really funny, and it shows Kyle Larson's personality. Because if you've seen recently, Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain got into it not too long ago at Dover a couple days ago, and there was a lot of contact and frustration between both drivers. So I found that jab, having that watermelon there, pretty funny. But in all seriousness, honesty, Kyle Larson is going to run the 2024 Indianapolis 500, and I also believe he's going to run the 2025 Indianapolis 500 as well. And I think a lot of people are looking at Kyle Larson thinking he could actually be a favorite to win and actually do the double, become the first driver to complete the double by winning both. And of course, drivers have completed the double, but it's been a long time since drivers have competed and tried to do the double. The last time someone did the double was Kurt Busch, and that was in 2014. He finished 6th in the Indy 500 and was close to completing the Coke 600. Unfortunately for Kurt, he had an engine failure with about 100 laps to go in this race. That race that took him out of contention to go for it. But I think Kyle Larson could become the first driver to win the double. He's going to be in a really strong car, of course, for the Coke 600. Hendrick Motorsports always brings a lot of great pace. and a lot of great speed. I expect Larson to be really strong. He was really good in last year's Coke 600 2022, and of course won the 2021 Coke 600. And we've seen Hendrick have really strong speed on the mile and a half in the last couple of years, and I expect it to be really strong in next year's Coke 600 as well. And you look at Aaron McLaren. Aaron McLaren has been really, really good in Indy 500. They really were one of the strongest teams in the 2022 Indy 500, and they're expected to be favorites in 2023. I think that will carry into 2024. So I think Kyle Larson actually has a legitimate shot. If there's anybody in this Cup field right now that I think that can compete the double by winning it, it's Kyle Larson. So I think Larson does have a really good chance to win it. I think we're going to be talking about that next year. It's good that he'll be running the Indy 500 2024, and I think he's got a really good chance and a really good shot to get it done. I think he's a favorite to get it done, and I think he'll have a really good opportunity to win the Indy 500 2024. I think he'll do very, very good in next year's Indianapolis 500, and also in 2025 if he doesn't win in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Richard Childress Racing. So this story that kind of went under the radar over the last few weeks. But Richard Childress Racing over the last weeks actually got handed a 60-point penalty, an L1 penalty, for messing with the underwing and the mounting assembly below the car. And they had their appeal yesterday, and they unfortunately lost their appeal. And this goes all the way back to Martinsville. And actually, they had the appeal. Actually, we got a little bit more details on why they lost their appeal. Apparently, the nuts were not threading on the bottom of the mounting, and that's why they were modified. Therefore, they lost their appeal. Now, Richard Childress Racing did release a statement in regards to this, and they said they are disappointed by the outcome, but they're not going to go to the final appeals panel, and they're going to go ahead and move on and focus on this upcoming week at Kansas Speedway. First thing I want to say, I'm not entirely surprised or shocked that they've lost their appeal. If they modified those parts below, especially with the assembly below, I'm not surprised they would end up losing their appeal. The other thing I really love is the transparency. We were talking about this at the beginning of the year, but we had a lack of transparency, especially with the Hendrick penalty. How come Hendrick ended up basically winning their appeal, but Kaulig Racing basically ended up losing their appeal, and they ended up winning the final appeal? Well, kind of ended up winning their appeal as they got all their points back, and we're back in a better position for the 31 organization, and I think that was a really cool thing. And one of the things that were changed, especially with the Hendrick situation, is they decided to go ahead and let the appeals panel basically end up hearing and actually giving their reason why they decided to go, which I love the transparency side of things. I wish it's something that was done before the 2023 season, because you don't always like to see changes in the middle of the season. But one thing that makes me really, really happy is the fact that NASCAR is like, you know what? We're going to change the rules, and we're going to be a lot more transparent. And that's one thing I really, really love about it now is, while yes, I wish that they would have done it at the beginning of the year, I love the fact that it's now better late than never to make this change. It needed to happen. I'm glad they're being basically transparent about it. Transparency is key, and fans should absolutely know. I hope, especially if we have appeals going forward, they go ahead and live stream these appeals. I'm a little surprised that there wasn't a live stream for the Richard Childress Racing appeal. I think that would be something really, really cool to watch. Have it up on NASCAR's YouTube channel, or have it up on their social medias, or Richard Childress Racing social media for that matter. I would have thought that would have been a really, really cool thing. But again, I'm not surprised or shocked they've lost their appeal. It's disappointing they lost their appeal. Again, they had the little statement that looked like though the timing could not be worse. Honestly, though, it is good to. It's unfortunately lost their appeal, but I'm really glad to see that they were transparent about it. And nonetheless, I love the transparency that came out from it, and I love that we're being a little more transparent. It's a really good thing for the sport, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Berry. Now, yesterday we talked about Josh Berry because a lot of rumors going around about Josh Berry potentially driving for Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024. We had a couple things came out. Of course, on Friday, Larry McReynolds was on Sirius and NASCAR Radio, and he said that Josh Berry had a full-time ride set for 2024, and now it's going to be coming around the Coke 600 weekend. And then we got a little more updates on regards to that, and it sounds like he's a favorite to go to the 4-car. Well, another domino in regards to this story might have fallen last night. So last night, Adam Sir reported, he says that Josh Berry is finalizing a long-term management deal with Kevin Harvick Incorporated Management per sources. He also noticed that Berry has become a highly rated driver through his super sub role, substituting for Chase Elliott and also Alex Bowman this season. And if you look at statistics with Josh Berry has done a very awesome, incredible job and been one of the best super subs we have seen in NASCAR Cup Series history, getting a runner finish at Richmond and also having a really strong run in other races throughout the year, including a pretty strong run at Dover this past weekend as well. We talk a little more about this, but this would be a very interesting move for Stewart-Haas Racing to make. Now, why could this move end up happening? Well, number one, we talk about Josh Berry. Josh Berry is an incredible talent who knows how to get it done behind the wheel of a race car. And like I said, he has done a very solid and a very incredible job as a super sub in this sport. And a lot of people look at Josh Berry as someone who can really get the best out of equipment. Also, another big reason is Josh Berry is a little bit older of a driver. Josh Berry, I believe, will be 33 by the end of this year. And by the start of 2024, he'll be 33 and will turn 34 in the 2024 year. Also, Josh Berry always gets the best out of equipment. He tends to run up front on a consistent basis and does a really good job in Xfinity. He has scored 5 wins in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and has been the best performing junior motorsports driver so far through the first 9 or 10 races of their season up to this point. And I think Josh Berry going to Stewart-Haas Racing would be a really good move for their team. Also, with him now signing with KHI Management, which that's going to be coming really, really soon. Of course, Kevin Harvick's organization based in the management company, that is really, really big for that management company over there because, like I said, I think Josh Berry knows how to get it done behind the wheel. Now, if he truly is going to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024, what are my expectations for Josh Berry going to next year? Well, I think Josh Berry, realistically, he's not going to perform as good as Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick is one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time, one of the top 10 greatest in my honest opinion, and Kevin Harvick has outperformed that 4 equipment. And I think Josh Berry, though, will be pretty good in that 4 car. He's going to have a really strong crew chief, that, of course, being Ronnie Childers, who I believe is still going to be crew chiefing that 4 car in the 2024 calendar year, and will be in crew chiefing there. That is a guy who knows how to set up a car right. He did a really good job with Michael Waltrip Racing, helped Scott race in 2006 as well, and knows how to do a good job as a crew chief overall as well. And I think he's going to do a really good job with Josh Berry next season. Now, going back to my expectations, what are my expectations for Josh Berry? Well, I think Josh Berry will be a playoff contender. I think he will contend for top 5s and top 10s on a consistent basis. It would not surprise or shock me if he does end up getting maybe a win or 2 next season. I think that 4 car is the best car in the Stewart-Haas Racing fleet, and we've seen Kevin Harvick do a great job in the 4 team. And to look at Stewart-Haas Racing overall, they need to have stability with this team and a little bit older veteran presence. They have a lot of younger drivers who are in the lower series, like a Riley Herbst and a Cole Custer. But if you want my honest opinion, I think Josh Berry is a better driver than Cole Custer, and I think he's a better driver than Riley Herbst. And I think he would do a really awesome job driving for Stewart-Haas Racing. And I think he'll be a playoff contender next year and do a really, really good job. Would he be my personal first choice for the Stewart-Haas Racing car? No, I would probably go with Zane Smith, because Zane Smith, I think, is a really, really talented driver and basically Ford's best project right now. But if they bring Josh Berry over to Ford, that is a huge pickup for the Ford development group and that program overall. So I think Josh Berry would be a really big pickup for Stewart-Haas Racing next season, and it sounds like it's likely going to happen. I think this is a really, really good move overall for the team. And I just think this is a really strong move because next year you're going to have Chase Briscoe, who's been starting to come in his own before this past week at Dover, who's had some good runs this year so far. You got Eric Almirola, who also could retire at the end of the year, and maybe Josh Berry goes to the 10 car, but it's likely at this particular point that we're going to see Josh Berry in the 4 car. There is potential possibly that 10 car could have some new drivers going in there because Eric Almirola could retire at the end of the 2023 season because Eric Almirola has said he's 50-50 if he's going to come back next year. He does have a multi-year deal with Stewart-Haas Racing, but it sounds like that second year, 2024, could maybe just be an option year right now, so that could be a potential ride that is available as well for someone to go to. Would not surprise me if Zane Smith goes to the 10 car next year. I think Zane Smith, because he has a contract for right now through 2026, and Zane Smith knows how to get it done behind the wheel, and Zane Smith would do a really good job in that 10 car. So potentially next year, you could have Josh Berry in the 4 car, you could have Zane Smith in the 10 car next year, someone else in there, you'll have Chase Briscoe in the 14 and Ryan Preece in the 41 car. This is a really strong team in my opinion. They just need to work on getting their cars a lot better. That's one thing that's been a huge key thing. And also with the Josh Berry move, you also have to remember that Dale Jr. is good friends with Tony Stewart, which is another big reason why I think this is going to end up happening. And we heard at the end of that podcast saying Dale had a really big favor for Tony Stewart, and Dale Jr. has said publicly if Junior Motorsports decide to make the jump up the Cup that he doesn't want to bring Josh Berry into that car because he doesn't want Josh Berry to struggle. He wants him to go to a pretty stable team. Look no further than Stewart-Haas Racing, and I think SHR is a really good team to go with going forward. So this is a really good move nonetheless of happening. It sounds like it's going to happen for 2024, and honestly, I'm really excited about it. Sounds like the announcement could be coming within the next few weeks. Sounds like maybe around the Coke 600 weekend, we're going to officially find out the official deal, and nonetheless, this is a really, really good thing to see that we're going to see Josh Berry in the Cup Series likely with Stewart-Haas Racing. I think it's a really big pickup for the team, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Legacy Motor Club. Now, I did a little bit of a short video on this situation, but yesterday afternoon around 11 or 11:30 Central Standard Time or 12 o'clock Central Standard Time, Legacy Motor Club made a pretty big bombshell announcement yesterday. And it was announced that they'd be switching manufacturers from Chevy to Toyota starting in the 2024 season. Now, there's a lot of questions on the driver lineup for 2024, and they're still going to have Noah Gragson and Eric Jones in their respective places, meaning Noah Gragson will be in the 42 car and Eric Jones will be in the 43 car in 2024. And also the 84 car will technically be around in 2024, so there's a potential possibility that Jimmy Johnson might be making some starts in 2024, though we're not entirely sure on that. Now, what this means is that Toyota will have 8 full-time cars in 2024. David Wilson was asked a question if they want to expand. He says that Toyota does want to expand in the foreseeable future, but right now it sounds like currently at the moment they're not going to expand in 2024 besides the cars that they have gone and expanded. The other things that have been asked is GMS Racing, because remember, Maury Gallagher owns the Legacy Motor Club organization and GMS. Yes, they are separate identities. However, it sounds like GMS could have to switch to Toyota in the 2024 season, which means the drivers like Grant Enfinger, who has been with Toyota in the past, and Roger Kroof and Daniel Dye may be in jeopardy of losing their ride at the end of 2023. Maybe Roger Kroof ends up going to KBM in 2024. We're going to have to wait and see on that, but it sounds like Roger's future could be a little uncertain because Roger's been part of the Chevy brand for the last few years. I'd imagine that we're going to see him either go to Rev Racing if they decide to expand next year, or we're going to see him go ahead and drive for maybe KBM in 2024. We also were asked if Jimmy Johnson was said to Hendrick Motorsports basically is supportive of the decision as well. There's a lot of layers and a lot in depth to talk about the Legacy Motor Club move. Obviously, if you've been paying attention for the last few years, this organization, when it was Richard Petty Motorsports, they've been rumored really since the middle of 2021 to be potentially switching to Toyota. We heard rumors back in 2021. Corey LaJoie mentioned that on his podcast. And we've known that Toyota has been trying to expand for 2024. We also know that Ford, they want to expand for 2024. They first actually talked to Trackhouse Racing about potentially switching because Trackhouse Racing tends to make really big moves. But they're committed to Chevy on the long-term Trackhouses. So you think about other organizations, and Legacy Motor Club kind of fits that mold. Now, why does this end up happening, and how is this really, really good for everybody? Well, I think there's a couple things that end up happening. Number one, this is a big win for everybody here. Number one, this is a big win for Toyota. Toyota gets more teams in their stable, and that's what they need. The more numbers they have, especially for super speedway tracks, the better it is going to be for them, and it's going to help performance, especially on super speedways. Yes, Toyota is really strong in super speedways, and they're really good at Talladega. But the more numbers you have on the super speedway tracks, the better you're going to be. The second thing, you get 2 really talented drivers joining back in your stable. Because remember, Eric Jones and Noah Gragson were both part of the Toyota stable for many years. Eric Jones actually started in the Toyota development system when Kyle Busch discovered him. He drove for KBM, won a championship with KBM in 2015. Drove for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series in 2016, and a couple of those years as well. Almost won the 2016 championship. Then in 2017, joined Furniture Racing and drove for them in the 77 car and almost won races with them. Then he joined Joe Gibbs Racing for a few years, but when Levine Family Racing shut down in the 2020 season, they had to choose between putting Christopher Bell in the 20 car or keeping Eric Jones. And let's be honest, Christopher Bell has done a better job in that car than Eric Jones did, though Eric Jones did a pretty solid job with Joe Gibbs Racing. And then you think about Noah Gragson. No Grayson started with KBM in 2015 and 2016, but then in 2017 went full-time, and then 2018 was there at KBM. Let's be honest, performance underwhelming. Then in 2019, he went to the Xfinity Series and drove for Junior Motorsports, won a lot of races, and nearly won a championship with Junior Motorsports, and now he's getting back into the Toyota stable. The other big thing, the other big win for me is you have them getting better performance. Legacy Motor Club in 2023, they have completely struggled this season. You look at their performance from 2022 compared to 2023. Eric Jones was competing for a playoff spot for most of the season and actually won a race, that being the Southern 500 last season, and was consistently in the top 12 or top 15 points on consistent points. Now, he didn't make the playoffs last year because of winning your in system, but he was still extremely consistent. This year, Eric Jones has struggled on a big way. He's only had a couple top 10 so far, and has been running outside the top 15 and top 20 in a lot of races this season. The other big thing, other driver, Noah Gragson, has done worse than Ty Dillon. Ty Dillon was not good in that 42 car last year, but Noah Gragson has almost been worse this year. He's 32nd in the points right now, and going back to Eric Jones right now is 24th in the NASCAR Cup Series points on a consistent basis. Now, they definitely have time to turn this around. And why have they struggled this year? Well, you think about Legacy Motor Club. They had big change in the ownership this year. You had a bunch of Jimmy Johnson's guys come in, and maybe they're not as good as we think. The other thing, focus factor. They left at the end of last year. We know that they dropped their sponsorship with Legacy Motor Club, and they're no longer sponsoring. They're supposed to have a multi-year deal with this team, but unfortunately losing that focus factor sponsorship. If you notice, Elysian and Sunseeker, which are companies that Maury Gallagher owns, they're basically been a sponsor for most of the time, and focus factor has not been on the card because they left at the end of last year. I think losing that funding has been a major factor why they've been struggling. So with this, they're going to get a lot of funding from Toyota. They're going to have Sirius XM probably joining them. They're probably going to have companies like McDonald's potentially because I think they're part of that Toyota branding. They're going to have other companies part of Toyota, and they'll have the Toyota sponsors that are able to come in and sponsor both drivers. I think this is a win-win overall. Chevy, though, does lose a little bit of strength, but I think that honestly, Legacy Motor Club has probably been the worst performing Chevy team so far this season, so it's probably the lowest in the food chain right here. And honestly, people ask, well, why is Richard Petty switching here? Well, Richard Petty doesn't really make as many decisions anymore at Legacy Motor Club. Jimmy and Maury Gallagher really make a lot of decisions, and let's be honest, Richard Petty has driven different manufacturers before, and it's no secret that Richard Petty Motorsports back in 2010 or 2011, they almost actually ended up driving a Chevy instead of driving a Dodge or a Ford, but eventually switched over to Ford in 2011. I think nonetheless, this is a really, really good move for both sets and both parties overall, and I think Legacy Motor Club is setting themselves up for a bright future. We know that they want to become a team that wants to win on a consistent basis, and I think making this move Toyota is really going to help them out. They want to start winning a lot more, and I think this is a great move. I think this is going to help both drivers and the team, help Toyota overall, and I think nonetheless this is a really, really strong and really good move for both parties and both sets. A great move, and I'm excited to see that Legacy Motor Club is switching Toyota in 2024. I think is a really good move for both parties. So, that is for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank us for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Notifications on so you know if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below with that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What are thoughts about Legacy Motor Club switching to Toyota? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are thoughts about Josh Berry expected to drive for Stewart-Haas Racing next season? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't know if there's going to be another video on the channel today. I'm not entirely sure yet. There will be only one video on the channel tomorrow, and that, of course, is going to be the race picks for the upcoming race at Kansas. Then Friday, there should be another NASCAR news video. Then on Saturday on the channel, there probably might be two videos. There might be a silly season update coming out on Saturday, but there's also, of course, going to be the NASCAR Truck Series race review from Kansas. And on Sunday, we'll have the NASCAR Cup Series race review from Kansas as well. And then next week, we got a lot of content on the way. There's a lot of special content coming on the channel really, really soon that I think you're going to enjoy. There's going to be a Darlington Throwback paint scheme. Look at all the paint schemes for that. That will be coming out likely Tuesday or Wednesday or maybe Thursday. I'm not sure yet, but nonetheless, there's a lot of content dropping on the channel that I think you're going to enjoy. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.